Jace sat quietly in the cargo bay of his old ship, staring at the blinking light on his console. The message was simple, but the weight it carried was heavy. Pickup confirmed. Transport and deliver immediately, no questions. He had done dozens of jobs like this before, and he never asked what was inside the crates. But this time, there were no crates, no packages, just one living alien mother and her 2 frightened children. When he opened the bay doors on planet Zyril, the guard shoved the 3 passengers forward. The mother's hands were tied, her head lowered, and her 2 small children clung to her legs. The girl looked no older than 5, and the boy was barely able to walk. They looked up at Jace with wide, glowing eyes, confused and scared. The guards handed Jace a data chip. Destination is Barta 9, slave auction sector. Jace felt something cold press into his chest. Not from outside, but from inside. He nodded and didn't speak. He wasn't paid to speak. As the ship lifted off, silence filled the air. The mother didn't speak either, and neither did the children. Jace looked at them through the rear camera. They sat huddled together in the corner of the bay. He told himself not to care. He needed the money. Barta 9 jobs paid more than most, especially for living cargo. Later that night, as the ship drifted through silent space, he heard a small knock at the cockpit door. He turned, surprised, and saw the little girl standing there, holding something in her hand. It was a small drawing, made with a dull blue crayon. 3 figures standing under a big yellow sun. The tallest figure had Jace's hairstyle. She held it up to him, her eyes hopeful. "Is this your family?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "It's you, me, mama, and brother." Jace froze. He didn't know what to say. No one had called him family in years, not since his own brother died in the mining collapse on Mars. He took the drawing slowly and looked at her. "Why did you draw this?" he asked. She whispered, "Because you didn't hurt us." Jace couldn't sleep that night. He walked back and forth across the ship, haunted by that child's quiet voice. He checked the data chip again. Delivery must be made within 36 hours, or payment would be canceled. But what was he delivering? A mother and her kids, to a place where people were sold, chained, and never seen again. He had done this before, hadn't he? But this time, the guilt didn't leave. It stayed, like a shadow following his every step. The mother didn't speak until the next morning. As he handed them some water and ration bars, she raised her eyes and said softly, "Why haven't you locked us up?" Jace paused. Didn't see the need. She watched him carefully. "You're not like the others." Jace looked away, not wanting to answer. "I have to take you to Barta 9, he said. "That's the job." She nodded, but her voice didn't shake. "I know what happens there." The younger boy began to cry. Clutching his mother's side, she held him close, whispering something in a language Jace didn't understand. Then she looked back at him and said, "I don't blame you, human. You are just a tool in someone else's hand." Jace hated that. He didn't want to be a tool, a weapon, or a coward. He sat down in the cockpit, thinking hard. He could land on Barta 9, hand them over, and be paid. Or he could disappear, go dark, and hide them, risking his life and career. Why was this even a question? As the ship approached the Barta 9 system, he didn't input the final descent codes. He turned the ship instead, angled toward a dead moon he knew had no ports, no patrols, and no law. He opened the channel to the back of the ship. "We're not going to Barta," he said simply. The mother stared. "Why?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe because I'm tired of being heartless." The girl smiled. The boy stopped crying. The mother lowered her head and whispered, "Thank you." The blinking light on Jace's console turned red. It was the Syndicate. They had noticed he was off course. A message flashed: return to route or face consequences. But Jace didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, he felt like a man again, not a machine. He looked at the children through the camera. Maybe this time, he was delivering something far more important than money. He was delivering hope. The moment Jace powered down his ship on the dead moon, He knew he had crossed a line he could never return from. The stillness outside felt heavy, like even the air was holding its breath. Inside the dim cargo bay, the alien mother held her children close, unsure whether they had escaped danger or walked into new trouble. Jace didn't speak for a long time, just stood at the open hatch, staring into the endless dust plains. There were no cities here, no settlements, no eyes watching. At least that's what he hoped. He pulled a dusty tarp from storage and covered the ship, camouflaging it against the rocky hills nearby. His hands moved fast, but his mind was spinning. Every minute that passed without a signal from the Syndicate felt like a countdown to something worse. They had noticed he'd gone dark, but not sent a hunter yet. That part always came later, inside the ship. The girl handed him another drawing, this one messier, full of scribbles. Jace forced a smile and looked down. "You draw fast," he muttered. Sitting beside her on the floor, she nodded, her small antennae twitching as she grinned. Her brother waddled forward and plopped down in Jace's lap without a sound. The boy had still not spoken a single word, not even once. The mother watched from a distance, eyes cautious but softer now. She finally spoke, her voice low but steady. "I didn't tell you my name yesterday," she said. Jace glanced up. "Didn't ask for it." She stepped closer. "It's Lyra," he nodded, repeating the name in his head, trying to get the alien tone right. "Lyra," he said slowly. The woman gave a faint smile. "And my children are Sel and Tavi. Names made things harder. Names made them real." Jace stood and walked to the control panel, checking long-range sensors. Still no signals. But he didn't trust silence. It usually came before the storm. That night, he sat outside the ship under the stars, wrapped in an old coat. The cold bit through the fabric, but he didn't care. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had done. He could have walked away, collected his pay, and forgotten their faces within a week. But now they were part of his story, and he was part of theirs. A small hand touched his knee, and he looked down to find Sel standing beside him. She didn't speak, just leaned against him quietly. He placed an arm around her without thinking. "Do you miss your home?" he asked. She nodded, then said, "We never had one." Something about that sentence cut deeper than any blade. Even now, hiding on a barren moon, they felt safer than anywhere else. Jace looked up at the stars and wondered if he could ever give them more than just hiding places and running. He knew he had no plan, no escape route, no safe future. All he had was this moment, and a growing feeling he didn't recognize: responsibility. Lyra joined them in the starlight, carrying a blanket. She draped it over Sel and sat across from Jace. "I know they'll come," she said calmly. Jace didn't respond. She stared into the distance, her eyes reflecting starlight. "I've seen what the Syndicate does to traitors. So have I," Jace replied, voice heavy. Lyra tilted her head, curious. "Then why did you help us?" Jace didn't answer right away. He poked at the dry ground with a stick, then finally said, "Because someone should have helped me once, and no one did." That was the truth he never spoke. The past he had buried under credits, silence, and cold work. He had been a child once too, crying in the dark, waiting for someone to return. No one ever came. Before dawn, Jace ran a stealth scan over nearby systems, just in case. The results chilled him. A single ship had entered the edge of the system, not local traffic, not a supply route. It didn't send a ping or ID signal, which meant only one thing: it was hunting something or someone. He switched off every power source except life support. Inside the ship, he told Lyra to keep the kids quiet and hidden. She didn't ask questions, just obeyed. Tavi buried his face in her neck, and Sel gripped her mother's sleeve. Jace grabbed his blaster, the one he hadn't used in months, and stepped outside into the shadows. He moved like a ghost across the rocks, eyes scanning the sky. He knew this moon well, its caves, cliffs, and hiding spots. He waited on a ledge above the ship, watching, breathing slow. The silence stretched so long it became unbearable. Then, in the distance, A faint hum of an engine whispered through the air. They had found him. He could have walked away days ago. But now he had to stand and fight, not for himself, but for them, and he wasn't sure he'd survive what was coming. The hunter didn't need a name. He had erased it long ago. What he had now was a code, a silence, and a perfect record. He always brought the target back. Dead or alive, it didn't matter. And now, he was following the trail of one man who had made the biggest mistake of his life. Jace's face was on the bounty boards, marked high risk, but not kill on sight. That meant the syndicate wanted him alive so they could tear him apart themselves. The hunter liked those jobs the most. He stepped off his silent cruiser and sniffed the thin air of the dead moon. No sounds, no signals, but he felt it. His instincts told him someone was here, hiding, breathing, trying not to be found. Far below the ridge, Jace watched the silhouette of the hunter appear in the distance. He didn't move, didn't blink. He recognized the man not by face, but by posture, by the slow, careful steps of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Jace whispered. "Into his come. Don't make a sound." Lyra's voice replied quietly. "We're hidden." Jace tightened the strap of his blaster and moved back toward the rocks. He couldn't let the hunter near the ship. He had to lead him away, even if it meant not coming back, inside the ship. Lyra wrapped Sel and Tavy in blankets and sat near the rear vents. She could hear nothing but the soft breathing of her children. She closed her eyes and reached into her mind, calling up the old teachings of her people, ways to mask heat signatures, to still the heart, to become small in the presence of danger. The hunter reached the hill where the ship had once been visible. Now it was covered, hidden under rock dust and camouflage netting. But he wasn't fooled. He bent down and picked up a small object from the ground, a drawing, made with blue crayon, 3 smiling figures and a round yellow sun. He turned the paper over slowly and grinned. A child had been here, and that meant Jace had already failed. He was no smuggler. He was a guardian now. Jace led the hunter's eyes away by leaving a fake trail. Broken branches, boot marks, and disturbed rocks led into the narrow canyons nearby. It worked for a while. The hunter followed the signs, thinking he was close. But Jace was already behind him, watching from above. He aimed his blaster, his finger trembling. He had never killed anyone before. He didn't want to start now, but if he didn't fire, the hunter would find the kids. He pulled the trigger. The shot missed, hitting the rock wall beside the hunter's shoulder. The man didn't flinch. He simply turned and raised a small round drone from his belt. It flew up like a whisper and scanned the ridge. Jace ducked behind a ledge and ran. But the drone followed, fast and silent. A second shot came from the hunter's rifle. Jace felt heat rush past his ear as the rock behind him exploded. He slid down the slope, dust filling his mouth and eyes. He didn't stop until he was deep inside the canyon, hiding behind old mining equipment. His hand bled from a sharp cut, and his side ached from the fall. But he was alive for now. Back at the ship, Lyra could feel something had gone wrong. Sel whispered, "Where is Jace?" Lyra held her close and said, "He's coming back." But even she didn't believe those words. Her people had always told stories of humans cold, cruel, greedy, but Jace had been different. He had risked everything for them. Now he was out there, alone, and hunted. The hunter found the broken trail again and followed it deeper. He wasn't angry. He wasn't excited. He was focused. He had tracked pirates through firestorms, runaways through asteroid fields, even caught a telepath once, but this time something was different. The man he chased wasn't running for his own life. He was running to protect someone else. That kind of target was always the hardest, because they didn't break, they fought. Jace waited behind a collapsed metal crate, his blaster shaking. In his hand, he didn't hear the hunter's steps, but he felt them, getting closer. He checked the charge. Only one shot left, one chance, and then the voice came, not from the hunter, not from a speaker, but from his cum. Lyra, whispering, "We're leaving the ship. We'll hide in the caves. Stay alive." Jace's heart sank. "No," he whispered back. Stay where you are. I'll come to you." But the come went silent again. The hunter reached the canyon floor. Scanning slowly, he raised his rifle and said into his own come, "Target is close." Then he paused, frowning. A strange sound echoed down the canyon music. A child's lullaby, playing from an old speaker tucked behind a rock. It was a trap, and he had walked right into it. Asterisk, the blast from the speaker's hidden charge lit up the canyon like a second sunrise. The shockwave threw the hunter backward into the dust, his visor cracked, armor scorched. For the first time in years, he didn't get back up right away. He blinked through smoke and rubble, stunned. Somewhere in the haze, a voice whispered, "I said stay away from my family." Jace didn't wait to see if the hunter would recover. He ran, legs burning, lungs aching. He'd bought only seconds, not victory. And every second had to count. Back at the ship, Lyra and the children had slipped into a nearby cave. Tavy was clinging to her chest, silent and scared. Sal held her mother's hand tightly, her tiny face covered in dust. The cave was narrow and cold, lit only by the glow of a faint moss growing on the walls. Lyra moved slowly, carefully, following old instinct. Her people had once lived underground, hiding from enemies long forgotten. Now those same instincts were keeping her children alive. Jace reached them not long after, bruised and bleeding but still breathing. Lyra didn't speak, she just grabbed his arm and pulled him deeper into the tunnels. They didn't stop moving until the light vanished completely behind them. Finally, when they found a hollow pocket in the rock, they sat down, all of them in silence, hearts pounding. No one asked what happened. Jace didn't need to explain. They were alive, and that was enough for now. They stayed hidden for 2 days. Jace returned to the ship once, crawling through the rocks and avoiding every open space. The hunter's ship was gone, but Jace knew that didn't mean safety. A man like that didn't give up. He simply regrouped, recalculated, and came back worse. Inside the cave, time moved slowly. Jace set up small heat pads to keep them warm. He shared protein bars and water rations. Careful not to waste anything, Sel drew pictures on the cave walls using charcoal from an old campfire. One showed Jace with a big shield standing between her and a shadow with sharp claws. He looked at it for a long time without saying a word. One night, Lyra sat beside him while the children slept. She watched the flicker of his small lantern reflect in his tired eyes. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said softly. Jace leaned his head against the stone wall. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." She studied his face for a long moment. "We don't belong here." She said, "Neither do I," he replied, and gave her a tired smile. They were both people without homes, without roots. But somehow, in this cold cave, surrounded by silence and danger, they had found something close to it. The next day, Jace took Sel to a nearby ridge, far from the ship. He showed her how to use a simple come device, how to signal for help, how to hide in plain sight. She was smart, quick to learn. He looked at her and saw strength far beyond her years. "You're gonna grow up strong," he said. She looked up at him and replied, "Only if you're there too." Those words haunted him more than any bounty, because he knew staying with them meant more running, more danger, but leaving them meant something far worse. It meant breaking a promise. That evening, a noise echoed down the tunnel, the soft buzz of scanners. They froze, all of them. Jace turned off the lantern, placed a hand over Lyra's, and listened. The hunter was back, but this time he wasn't alone. Multiple pings, mechanical footfalls, syndicate droids. They weren't looking to talk. Jace handed Lyra a pack. "Take the kids, go deeper. Follow the left path until it narrows." She shook her head. "Not without you." Jace pulled her close, forehead against hers. "You gave me something to care about," he whispered. "Now let me protect it." Lyra hesitated, then grabbed the children and vanished into the dark. Jace turned back toward the mouth of the cave, heart thudding. He didn't have much left, but he had one more plan. He wired the remaining heat pads into a makeshift pulse trap. If it worked, It would disable the droids long enough for them to escape. If it didn't, he didn't think about that. He waited in the shadows, finger on the trigger. Listening as the sounds grew louder, the hunter's voice echoed coldly. "You're not a soldier, human, just a fool playing hero." Jace smiled to himself. "Maybe," he muttered, "but even fools can fight." The explosion lit up the cave like lightning inside a coffin. Flashes of red and blue crackled through the tunnels as metal sparked and bodies fell. Jace didn't know if the trap had worked or if he was simply lucky. All he knew was that the ground had shaken, and then everything went still. Smoke filled the narrow paths, and the sound of mechanical limbs grinding to a stop echoed like dying screams. Jace stayed low, waiting, his lungs burning from the fumes. He couldn't hear footsteps anymore, but that didn't mean it was over. He knew the hunter wouldn't fall to a trick that simple. The droids were probably just the first wave. He crawled back through a narrow crack in the rock, every muscle in his body aching. The walls scraped his skin, but he kept going. He had to find Lyra and the children before it was too late. Far deeper in the cave, Lyra moved silently, holding both children tightly. Cell walked without making a sound, copying her mother's every move. Tavi, too young to understand, clung to her chest and whimpered softly. She placed her hand gently over his mouth and whispered calming words in her native tongue. She didn't know if Jace was alive. The cave had shaken like it was falling apart. For a moment, she had thought the whole mountain would come down on them. But the silence that followed made her even more afraid. Back on the surface, the hunter stood outside the collapsed entry tunnel. One of his droids was half melted, the other sparked uselessly at his feet. His visor was cracked again, and blood ran down the side of his head. He didn't look angry, he looked amused. He pulled out a small black cube from his belt and activated it. A hologram of a pale alien with sharp teeth and glowing eyes appeared. The Syndicate commander. The hunter bowed his head slightly. "He has delayed me." The voice from the cube was cold and sharp. "Then remove the delay." The hunter nodded once and shut off the cube. No more warnings, no more capture orders. Now it was kill on sight. Jace found them at last, tucked between two slabs of stone near an underground stream. Lyra rushed to him and checked for wounds. His shirt was torn, and blood stained one arm. But he smiled weakly. "You should see the other guy," he joked. Cell grabbed his hand, and Tavi reached up to touch his face gently. For a moment, it felt like they had made it. But Jace knew better. He sat beside the stream, cleaning the cut on his arm while thinking. They couldn't stay here any longer. The hunter would come again, smarter, stronger, and next time he wouldn't. "Send droids. We need to leave the moon," Jace said. Lyra frowned. "How?" He looked at her. "I know a place, someone who owes me a favor." Hours later, they emerged from the cave under cover of darkness. Jace led them back to the ship, careful to avoid open ground. The camouflage net was still mostly intact. He powered the ship slowly, keeping the engines low to avoid a trace. But as they lifted off, a single red light blinked on the radar. A signal, small and fast, heading straight toward them. "They're coming," Jace muttered, gripping the controls. He turned the ship hard, cutting through a cloud of debris to mask their movement. Lyra strapped in the children and held them tight. Cell covered Tavi's ears as the engines roared. The red light followed, closer, faster. Then the signal vanished. Jace blinked, confused. Suddenly, a sharp jolt rocked the ship. A magnetic tether had locked onto the hull. They were being pulled backward. "No," he growled, slamming controls, trying to break free. But the force was too strong. A voice came through the distorted but clear. "You steal from the Syndicate, you die with them." The hunter's voice. Jace knew this wasn't about credits anymore. This was personal now. He opened the emergency hatch and grabbed the shock blaster. "You stay here," he told Lyra. "Seal the doors behind me." She reached out. "You won't win in open space." "I'm not trying to win," he said. "Just trying to give you time." He stepped out onto the outer walkway of the ship as it hovered. Stars spun above him, and the hunter descended from his own vessel. They faced each other between two ships floating in dead silence. Jace raised the blaster, but the hunter was faster. He fired once. Burning Jace's shoulder, Jace dropped to his knees, gasping. "You should have delivered the cargo," the hunter said coldly. Jace looked up, blood on his lips. "They're not cargo," he whispered. The hunter aimed again, but this time a flash of blue light exploded from behind. Lyra had fired through the emergency port with Jace's rifle. The hunter fell backward, stunned, not dead but for the first time beaten. Jace collapsed into Lyra's arms as she pulled him back inside. Sel and Tavi rushed to his side, tears in their eyes. The ship broke free of the tether, and they vanished into space. For now they had escaped, but they all knew the Syndicate would not forget, and running would not be enough forever. Blood dripped slowly from Jace's shoulder onto the cold floor of the ship. His vision blurred, and every breath felt like it was made of fire. He wasn't dead, but he was too close. Lyra knelt beside him, trying to stop the bleeding with torn fabric and trembling hands. Sel sat silently at Jace's feet, holding his hand tightly, refusing to cry. Tavi buried his face in his sister's lap, whimpering softly. The ship was flying blind, deep into unmarked space. Lyra didn't know where they were going, but she didn't stop. Jace had set the route before losing consciousness, and now they could only follow it. She sat in the pilot seat for the first time, heart pounding, hands shaking. Every control panel was foreign to her. But she pressed forward, because if she stopped now, he might not make it. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional groan from Jace. Lyra did what she could, patched his wound, gave him water, whispered to him even when he didn't answer. "Stay with us," she kept saying. "You didn't come this far just to leave." He stirred once, opened his eyes briefly, and whispered one word: "Family." When the ship finally dropped out of warp, a dusty blue planet appeared in front of them. It had no orbiting stations, no city lights, no signals, just wild mountains, thick forests, and one long canyon with a hidden landing bay tucked deep inside. The ship autopiloted its descent, slow and rough, like a tired bird returning to an old nest. Lyra braced for impact, and the landing gear scraped across gravel before settling into silence. They had arrived wherever this place was. Jace had trusted it, and now it was all they had. The entrance to the canyon was protected by a faded metal gate, half covered in vines. As Lyra stepped out carrying Tavi, with Sel at her side and Jace barely able to walk, the gate creaked open. A tall, bearded man stood on the other side, holding a long metal staff and squinting into the sun. "Jace?" the man said in disbelief. Jace gave a weak smile. "Still owe me a favor, old friend." Before collapsing into the dirt, the man was named Roke, a retired engineer who once smuggled medical tech under the Syndicate's nose. He didn't ask questions. He helped carry Jace into the main shelter, treated his wounds with care, and gave Lyra and the children a place to rest. That night, under a pale blue moon, Lyra sat beside Jace as he slept. She watched his chest rise and fall slowly, and whispered, "We're safe for now." The next few days passed quietly. Jace healed slowly. Though the pain never left his eyes, he didn't talk much, but when he did, it was always to the children. He taught Sel how to use a scanner, how to read the human letters. He showed Tavi how to press buttons on a food replicator and cheer when it worked. And he looked at Lyra the way no one had ever looked at her, not as something broken, but something brave. One evening while the kids were asleep, Jace and Lyra sat on the porch of the shelter, watching stars blink above. "You could leave," she said softly. "You don't owe us anything." Jace shook his head slowly. "I do." She looked at him confused. "You reminded me I still had something good inside me," he said. "You made me feel human again." Lyra didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. She reached over and took his hand. It was rough and calloused, but warm, For a moment, neither of them felt hunted, lost, or afraid. Roke gave them old tools to help repair the ship. Sel helped him fix solar panels while Tavi chased glowing bugs in the grass. Lyra cleaned the interior, preparing for the next journey if there had to be one. And Jace sat on the ramp of the ship, watching them all. He had run cargo, smuggled weapons, lied, cheated, and survived. But this felt like the first time he was truly living. One morning, a signal pinned in the old communication tower behind the shelter. Roke ran inside and checked the source. His face paled. He rushed to Jace, who was just stepping out of the ship. "It's them," Roke said. "They've traced your warp signature. It's only a matter of time." Jace nodded slowly. He had known this peace wouldn't last, but he wasn't scared anymore. He had something worth fighting for now. He looked at Lyra, who was already gathering the children. She met his eyes and said, "We stand or run, but we stay together." Jace stepped forward and placed his arm around her shoulder. "No more running," he said. "This time we fight." The sky above the canyon changed color that morning. It was no longer blue but streaked with shades of fire and metal. Two small dark dots grew larger with each second, moving fast, cutting across the clouds like knives. They were Ship Syndicate. Ships didn't need a scanner to know they had come for him. Inside the shelter, Sel stared through the window with wide eyes. "Are they going to take us again?" She asked quietly. Jace knelt beside her, placed his hands on her shoulders, and shook his head slowly. "No one's taking you," he said. "Not while I'm standing." Lyra stood behind them, already holding Tavi in one arm and a small pack in the other. She had made her choice days ago. She wouldn't run again. Not this time. Not after everything they'd built. Roke opened the hidden trapdoor behind the workbench, leading to a narrow tunnel below. "Take the kids and hide," he told Lyra. "That tunnel leads to the forest on the other side of the ridge." Jace looked at her, pain in his eyes. Lyra didn't want to go, but she knew they couldn't all fight. She leaned in and kissed his forehead. "You come back to me," she whispered. He nodded, gripping her hand tightly. Sel didn't want to leave either. She tried to hand Jace one last drawing, a picture of all four of them holding hands under a sky with stars. He took it, folded it carefully, and placed it in his shirt pocket. Then he watched them disappear into the tunnel, the metal door sealing. Behind them, outside, the first ship landed hard, crushing a line of metal crates into dust. The second hovered above, its weapons glowing with energy. From the lower ramp, the hunter stepped out again. His armor was scorched, one eye hidden behind a black lens, but his stride was steady. He was back to finish what he started. Jace stepped out into the open, blaster in hand. Roke stood beside him, holding a pulse rifle too old to still work, but sometimes old things surprised you. The hunter raised his hand and signaled to his squad. 6 soldiers spread out behind him, silent and armed. "You could have disappeared," the hunter called out. "But instead, you made it personal." Jace didn't flinch. "They're my family now," he replied. "And I don't sell my family." The hunter gave a small, cruel smile. "Then die with them." The firefight began fast, violent, and loud. Bolts of light cut through the air, burning through metal and dirt. Roke took down one soldier before a blast hit him in the leg. Jace pulled him back, dragging him behind a crate. "We hold them here," he shouted. "No matter what," from the ridge above. A sudden burst of light rained down Lyra, holding a stolen blaster, firing with trembling hands. Sel stood beside her, throwing rocks, screaming. The surprise attack broke the enemy's line, forcing them to scatter. Tavi's tiny voice echoed through the canyon, yelling Jace's name with all his strength. That sound lit a fire in Jace's chest. He rushed forward, dodging fire, using every broken wall and shadow to his advantage. He reached the hunter and tackled him to the ground. They fought with fists, blades, rage. No words were spoken anymore, only survival. The hunter was stronger, trained, merciless. But Jace fought with something the hunter didn't have. He fought with the memory of a child's drawing in his pocket, with the warmth of Lyra's kiss still on his skin, with the promise he made to a family that had given him a second chance at last. With a roar, Jace struck the final blow. The hunter collapsed, unconscious, blood dripping from his broken mask. The remaining soldiers, seeing their leader fall, retreated to the ship. Smoke rose as the engines fired, and the ships disappeared into the clouds. Silence fell over the canyon, heavy but peaceful. Jace dropped to his knees, heart pounding, hands shaking. Lyra ran down from the ridge, children behind her. She fell into his arms, holding him so tightly it hurt. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "Not while I still have something to live for," he replied. Roke limped over, chuckling. "You sure know how to make enemies." Jace laughed for the first time in days. The danger was not over forever, but they had won today. They had drawn a line, and the Syndicate had been forced to step back. That night, they sat under the stars, tired but together. Sel curled up beside Jace, drawing a new picture of them around a small house. Lyra watched the sky with quiet eyes, holding Tavi close. Jace looked at them and knew this was where he belonged. Not in war, not in the shadows, but here, protecting them, loving them, fighting for them. Home wasn't a place, it was a choice, and he had finally made his.